You guys know that we've had an increase in the sightings of coyotes, so we thought it would be fitting for the this department to give you a little insight and a little education on the coyotes that we're seeing in our city.
Thank you, Councilman Bowers, for setting this up. So I'm going to go through a few coyote laws and regulations, and then I'll get right into tips to avoid coyote conflicts. So thank you for your time in advance. So for coyote legal status, they are considered non-game animals. So the way that the California Department of Fish and Game organizes animals are into 4 categories. There's endangered or especially protected animals, and then there's also fur-bearing and game animals. So for those 2 categories, there's a limit on how many you could take a particular season and when you could take them, etc. And then for any other animal, they fit into the non-game category. So there's not protections on them, they're just everything else that nobody cares about. So the way my former boss said was that coyotes have as many protections as a gopher. However, you do have to follow the rest of the laws and regulations if you do want to take coyotes. So, for example, no shooting of firearms within city limits. There's no registered pesticides for them, so it's illegal to poison them. I don't recommend doing so. And it's illegal to relocate them. If you do trap them, you either have to release or euthanize them on site. It's illegal to relocate any wildlife in the state of California unless you have a permit from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they usually only give those out for the specially protected or endangered animals. And then last but not least, it's illegal to feed coyotes. That is a misdemeanor. According to the LA County Code of Ordinances. So this is it in its glory right here. It's a misdemeanor to feed any mammalian predators like coyotes, raccoons, foxes, or possums, or any rodents like squirrels or rats. So if you see somebody next time feeding a squirrel, you could tell them that it is a misdemeanor. So yeah, please don't get caught red-handed like this lady in the San Francisco article in 2022 did, literally handing red meat out to coyotes. So now I'm going to go through just foundational integrated pest management foundations to avoid coyote conflicts. So that's in the form of exclusion, sanitation, and hazing. For exclusion, it's very hard to exclude a coyote. Sorry, is there like a reverb? Do I need to be here? Or was I good before? Okay, so yeah, they could jump 5 to 6 feet easily. So I'm not sure if Compton has a limit on how high fences could be. Do you guys know?
I would say 6 feet.
6 feet. Okay, all right. So you can't. I'm sorry, you can't build higher than 6 feet. So the next best thing, if you want to protect your pets, would be to build a small outdoor enclosure like a catio or a dog run. Remember that coyotes can dig, so if you are building an enclosure, just be sure to make sure that you bury it partially underground so that the coyote can't access your pets or your chickens or from under. And then, especially at this time of year in Southern California, coyotes have a strict timeline of when they'll have their pups. So it's always in March, April, and May. We're just concluding pup season this year. So here is a picture from Hacienda Heights, or photo of coyote pups underneath open or above ground pool. So they were crafty enough to dig a hole right under the concrete. So if you have anything, like in my experience in the urban environment, coyotes have made dens in open spaces underneath decks, underneath people's homes if the crawl space is compromised, underneath if there's gaps underneath a shed, or even if there's a lot of dense vegetation, they could just dig a hole in the hillside and have their pups there. So they're extremely opportunistic. Please take a chance if you have your own property to just survey the area and make sure that you're not giving them any opportunities. For sanitation, coyotes are the ultimate opportunists. One of the reasons why they become so successful and are able to fit very comfortably in the urban environment is they could eat almost anything. So we do work with a scientist from the University of California. We give her the coyotes that we take, and she's looked at their stomach contents and found shoe soles or condoms. Like, they really will eat anything, but they'll also eat lizards, they'll eat birdseed, they'll eat livestock and your beloved pets, unfortunately. So for sanitation, fruits are a really big part of their diet as well. Please make sure that there's no low-hanging fruits or fruits on the ground for them to get to. Also, maintain bird feeders, as you could see from that photo on the right. Rats love birdseed and coyotes love rats, so that's one service that they will provide. So please remove your bird feeders at night, or get the special ones that have a baffle on top, which is sort of like a upside down plate that prevents squirrels or rats from accessing your birdseed. And make sure you sweep up the birdseed from the ground before nightfall. And then the University of California recommends, if you have any low-hanging trees or dense bushes, to trim that up 1 to 3 feet from ground level, just to prevent any harborage. Especially if you have pets that go out into the backyard, you don't want to create ambush spots that the coyote could use. And then for just general sanitation, not just for coyotes, but to also decrease rat, possum, raccoon, skunk foraging in your backyard. Just make sure that your trash and compost is inaccessible. Coyotes are not as handsy as raccoons, but I do suggest, if you do have the privilege to keep your garbage in your garage, I would do so until garbage day. If you can't, then you could secure your garbage with a bungee cord, either the top to the trash can or the trash can to a wall, just so they can't knock it over. And then last but not least, limit the time that pet food and water is outside. Coyotes love it, and raccoons really love pet food too. And then last but not least, there's hazing that we always recommend for coyotes. So there's no scientific evidence that hazing works, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that it does. So that's just being aggressive to coyotes in whatever way you feel comfortable with, especially if you do it consistently. So my favorite is just walking towards them while clapping my hands, but you could yell, you could throw rocks, you could open a garbage bag in front of them. There's this Canadian study that said that really freaks them out. But anything you have on hand, you could use a noisemaker like pots and pans. If you're gardening your plants and see the coyote, you could water the coyote. And then there are some passive hazing devices, but those do not work as well as just hazing the coyote yourself. So, but for example, like if you are seeing the coyote in your backyard at 3 a.m. on your camera and you don't want it there anymore, there's passive deterrents that might work, at least temporarily. So for example, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife have a deterrent list that lists predator eyes. So those are the picture of those two bright red lights that are motion sensor. The coyote might think that it's a bigger animal. It might work longer if you move it around from time to time just to keep the coyote on its toes. There's also automated sprinkler light systems, noisemakers, or all-in-one like that. One example is Have a Heart's Critter Ritter, but there's a lot of other companies that produce similar objects. Again, I would suggest moving it around or messing with the timing just to throw coyotes off. And then lastly, there's some experimental work going on with fladry, so that's the colorful ribbon on the bottom. So that definitely works to keep wolves away from livestock. So if you just tie a rope around the perimeter of your property and then tie colorful ribbon on it, it may scare the coyote away from your backyard. For other tips to protect your dogs, so I would try to avoid coyote prime time as much as you can from dusk to dawn. If you can't, I know that's easier said than done, especially when it's so hot or when it's going to get hot later at the Try being extra vigilant. If you have a retractable leash, trade it in for a tight one just so you have more control over the situation. And then I would start bringing a noisemaker on your walks. So tying a whistle to your leash so you don't forget it, or bringing an air horn or that garbage bag with you. And then at this time of year, especially since the coyotes are having their pups, they do sometimes escort you. So they'll follow you if you're close to their den from 5 to 6 feet behind until you're safely out of harm's way from the den. So it's not necessarily aggressive behavior, but just defensive behavior. If that ever happens to you, don't panic. Never turn your back towards a coyote and start walking or running away just because that canine instinct to chase might kick in. The best thing to do is to stand your ground. So get your dog as close to you as possible, pick it up if it's small enough, and then turn around, make eye contact with the coyote, and then use that noisemaker from afar. If you have to be somewhere, then back away slowly like you would do to a bear. For outdoor cats, unfortunately, those are probably one of the top food, well, those are definitely one of the top food menu items for coyotes in the city. There was this paper came out recently just solidifying that neighborhoods that had more outdoor cats had more coyote issues. So sometimes they do bring the coyotes in. If you are worried about the outdoor cats, the Humane Society does have some tips for increasing their survivorship, but that's not necessarily going to stop the coyotes from trying to take them still. So options could be just limiting the amount of time you leave food out for the cats, definitely take it away by nightfall, possibly make elevated feeding stations and maybe escape routes, for example, to your roof, or if you don't have a lot of trees in your environment, making something called a cat post, so a 4-inch by 4-inch piece of wood that goes 8 to 10 feet tall, so that way the cats could climb up, but the coyote can't. And then last but not least, for extra tips to protect people, please supervise toddlers when outside. The biggest that coyotes get out here on the West Coast is 35 to 37 pounds, but on average they're 22 to 23 pounds, so that's around the target of their prey. Their size are smaller. So in the event that coyotes do become aggressive, which is pretty rare, they will go after the smaller of us. So please supervise toddlers, never run away from a coyote, and again, if a coyote approaches you, treat the coyote like a bear. Don't approach it, don't run, don't make loud noises, and slowly back away. And as always, if there's an emergency, please call 911. For coyote aggression statistics, there's only been one fatality in the history of the United States that's been caused by coyote. It happened in 1981. It actually happened in Glendale. And there were many, many red flags before it happened. It was a completely preventable tragedy. Unfortunately, everyone was feeding the coyotes. That is why it's a misdemeanor. And so the coyotes got habituated towards us. They started biting. And eventually, a 3-year-old girl ran outside without her parents and got attacked. I know comparing coyotes to dogs is like comparing apples to oranges because we spend significantly more time with dogs, but dogs cause 30 to 50 deaths per year on average. So statistically, coyotes are safer, statistically. And when coyotes do become aggressive, there's an extremely high correlation with the neighbors feeding the coyotes. For the attacks that you see on the news where a coyote bites a toddler, 99.9% of the time it's because the neighbors are feeding them. So please do not encourage your neighbors to leave food out for any wildlife. For government intervention in coyotes that do become aggressive, there's some cities that do have tiered response plans for every coyote action there is. So for example, in Culver City, for most coyote management plans amongst cities, public education is provided from level green all the way to level orange. And level green would be like a coyote sighting, a coyote is seen moving in the area, whereas a level yellow or orange might be a coyote is attacking pets or is frequenting someone's backyard. If a coyote bite on a human occurs, then the state will kick in. So the California Department of Fish and Wildlife will, if they can, take a DNA sample of the bite and then set out traps until they catch their suspects. But yeah, as most cities in the U.S. have found, it really is a matter of the tips that I just presented to you in the exclusion, protecting your pets, sanitation, and consistent hazing that really decreases coyote conflicts. So yeah, sorry I was like facing the other way the whole time I was giving the presentation, but yeah, thank you so much for your time, and we have time for questions, or?
If anyone has any questions.